Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 54. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone again who has shared, liked, commented on the show. Your ratings, your reviews, all those things support us and help immensely. So please continue to support the show, help us highlight more expert guests and more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. I also want to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment is family owned and operated since 1976. Samson Equipment has been specializing in full turnkey weight room buildouts from planning to installation. Based in Las Cruces, New Mexico, Samson provides professional weight room solutions for those looking to lead the way in advancing our strength and conditioning profession. Coaches have relied on Samson as their top resource for all the professional weight room solutions because they provide the finest materials and design, product customization, and the most reputable customer service in the business. If you're in the market for elite level strength conditioning equipment, weight room renovations, or upgrades, be sure to check out samsonequipment.com to see how Samson has been delivering clients a long-lasting yet affordable product for over 4 decades. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to check out cerberusstrength.com and use promo code strength_game to save on your next order. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Coach Chris Messina. Chris is the assistant strength conditioning coach for the Boston Red Sox. Messina was promoted to the major league level in 2021 after serving strength conditioning roles with the Red Sox affiliate in the AAA, Arizona Fall League, and Eastern League team level. He joined the Red Sox organization in 2016 after serving as a minor league strength coach with the Bristol Pirates of the Appalachian League of the Pittsburgh Pirates organization. Messina got to start coaching as a graduate assistant at Salisbury University, in addition to completing an internship position at TCU, working with their football and baseball programs. Messina is also the host of the Professional Baseball Strength Conditioning Coaches Society podcast, which provides recognition for those who have experienced the unique demands of professional baseball performance enhancement. Messina is a former baseball player himself. A catcher, he played at SUNY Fredonia before moving into the coaching side. He continues to stay active in training following his collegiate playing career and is always finding ways to train at home, at work, and on the road during the grueling professional baseball season schedule. I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Chris Messina. What's going on, everybody? I've got a good friend of mine, former Salisbury Seagull, a little bit of everywhere now with baseball. We've been shooting the shit for a long time before this because we got some good old dugout war stories and weight room ones, but we got Coach Chris Messina on today. What's up, dude?
Nick, thanks for having me on. This is a very long time in the making, 100% because of my schedule. So thank you for bearing with me. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I like to ramble, so hopefully I don't fuck anything up too bad for us.
No, this show is about rambling, and I mean, yeah, it's been hard to track you down, but this is something a long time in the making. So I'm pretty stoked to actually get it going. You've been a seasoned podcaster for 4.5 years with an acronym podcast that I won't even begin to try to say again.
PBS CCS podcast. Yeah, I'm the host of that. It's just, I do interviews with strength coaches in professional baseball right now. We're going to expand it a little, but yeah, it's something I wanted to do. And I reached out to the higher ups in professional baseball and they've let me run with it. I'm very thankful. And it'll be interesting to be on the other side of the interview. I'm always on the host seat. So now being the interviewed guest will be interesting for me.
Yeah, it's less interviewee and more just conversational. So let's keep it to that because I'm not a very good host as it is. And like I said, I couldn't even remember PBS, PPS, all that stuff. But we'll link all this stuff in there because it's a great podcast. You've had a ton of great people in professional baseball at all ranks on too. So it's an awesome show for anybody to listen to. But I don't really care about that right now. I want to get into everything with you. How did you actually get involved in the strength game? What sports did you play growing up, and what's kind of led to your current training now?
So I played baseball and hockey mostly my whole life, but I was one of those kids that was always outside, football, soccer, basketball, whatever. It didn't really matter. I just liked being active. But I was kind of out of shape as a kid. I liked to eat way too much fast food. We played travel hockey, so it was like drive an hour for practice, grab some McDonald's, drive back. And one of the coaches that I had for JV baseball, Mario Muscarella, is the one that really grabbed me and brought me in the weight room. And I'm forever thankful for him. Honestly, when I got offered the big league spot with the Red Sox, I called, my parents, I called my wife, and I called Mario just to tell him that I was going to the big leagues. And he had kind of started that path for me of going to the weight room and just understanding as an athlete, like how important it can be for you. And then I was actually an undergrad in chemical engineering at the University of Buffalo. I was the valedictorian of my high school. And so I thought I needed to do something that was justifiable for that, I guess, if you could say. And I loved science. I loved math. And I got to UB and they told us, 2 out of 3 get through engineering and that third one doesn't. And, look to your left, look to your right. One of you 3 is not going to make it. And I looked at myself. I said, boys, you don't have to look anywhere else. It's going to be me. And I lasted 1 semester. We had like 250 kids in my chem class, people sitting on the floor, and it just didn't feel right to me. But I had always, like I said, I loved lifting and I loved sports. And so I transferred to SUNY Fredonia in my hometown, just outside of Buffalo. And I did exercise science. And a big part of that was my dad. And you hate to admit to your dad when he's right, but he was right all along. He was telling me, hey, you got to get into kinesiology, study the body, study exercise. And I was like, Dad, there's no future in that. There's no jobs. Like, I'm valedictorian. Like, I'm supposed to do something that's for smart people, right? Like, I'm not supposed to be in the weight room and be a meathead my whole life. And man, he was fucking right. And I was very wrong. Right. And, so I went there, did exercise science. I played baseball when I was at SUNY Fredonia, not terribly. I graduated a year early because I had enough credits. And then I went to Salisbury, and I knew nothing about strength and conditioning. My academic advisor, her friend, was the strength coach for the Chicago Bears. And that was it. That was the only time I had ever even heard strength coach. And when I was at Salisbury, I met Matt Nine in the rec gym there in Mags. And he was like, hey, you want to come volunteer for me? I was like, dude, I don't know what I'm doing, but yeah, sure, I'll be there. And then from there, that's when I met yourself. I met Ed. I met Nicoloi and the whole crew. And it was just like, it changed everything for me. And, I was like the bodybuilder type when I was coming up, chest on Monday, back Tuesday. And it opened up like what athletic training was for me, and, training for explosiveness and total body lifting. And, the Olympic lifts were something I had never seen. And it grabbed me, and I've never let go of it. It's just super fun. And it was the calling for me. And so I'm so glad, you can't go back in your process and change anything. And I don't think I would. Right. And, going to engineering and seeing like, this is not for me, made me appreciate the weight room and everything even more. And, it's kind of just led me to, now I just love lifting. I love training. And to be honest, I don't compete. I've always had like this like vision of potentially doing strongman. I'm super drawn to strongman training and the Atlas Stones. Like, you were the one that introduced me to Atlas Stones, and training with you and Andy at Salisbury, I was like, this is the shit I like to do. Like, these guys are strong, they're athletic, they're super conditioned, and they're just fucking fun to be around. And it's like, I've always wanted to do it. And the baseball schedule and the travel is just not super conducive for like the training. Like, very rarely would I have, access to implements and things like that. So it's like, you can do strongman Saturdays, but it's just not the same. And then in the off season, it's like, you're just grinding it out for 8 months. And then it's like, by the time you actually get acclimated and get a training block, it's time for spring training again. So, yeah, I mean, in a long-winded answer, like, that's kind of how I got into it. It's just, I didn't know anybody at Salisbury. I went with my friend from Fredonia. We happened to run into Matt, and by luck of the draw, by chance, like it just kind of led to where I'm at now.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I know I didn't know about the chemical engineering stuff and like actually choosing a different path and kind of finding out the hard way or maybe the easy way that that's not necessarily what you wanted to do. And I think a lot of people that end up getting into this profession, I haven't met a lot of them that come out of high school that are like gung ho about, I want to be a strength coach, because most people don't really understand that that's a legitimate career path or an avenue. I mean, pay aside for some levels, but there's so many different avenues that you can pursue as a coach, as someone that like gets an exercise science degree. So that's cool to see it, because like you said, it really kind of drove your passion for it, and then you really started to appreciate everything that went into it. But it's cool to hear that stuff. And yeah, kind of speaking on that schedule for everything, obviously it's very difficult with what you guys got going on, because I mean, you're traveling half the year all up and down. And I know it's a little bit cushier than where you've been in rookie ball and some of the lower minor league levels, but now as like the assistant strength coach for the Red Sox, you guys are playing what, 164 games?
162 in 180 days plus spring training plus playoffs.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to really dial in your training and kind of get in any competitions and stuff like that. But I know you still get after it wherever you're at for their gyms or popping in places at other facilities. So it's awesome to see that. You got to get some like Spud Ink strongman implements, some makeshift ones, so you can put them in your travel bag though.
Yeah, I've been looking at like alternates to the implements. There's nothing as good as an Atlas stone. And the thing is, I have an Atlas stone mold. It's at my parents' house, and I keep telling my wife, like, someday when we buy a house and we settle down, first thing I'm doing is making Atlas stones. Like, if we have nothing else in our gym except a squat rack and Atlas stones, I'm going to be the happiest dude on earth. And like, every time I go home, I see that mold, and my parents are like, do you want the mold? I'm like, I can't do it in the place I'm at. Like we're in like a townhome that, like, I can't put an Atlas stone on the third floor. Like, just my neighbor's not going to really be too appreciative of it. So it's the thing is, like, I kind of have a schedule of, in spring training, I know the schedule every day. I know the facility I'm going to have. And so it's really like a big work capacity time for me. That's when I do my strongman Saturdays, a lot of heavy carries and dragging things, pushing things like that. And then during the season, it's all just, based on the schedule, based on where we're playing, based on the time. And this year I really just got into doing like total body lifts every day, and just running when I could. And, even in the hotel room, like, as crazy as it is, like, sometimes there's something you can do step ups on, and I would do like 30 minutes of step ups in my hotel room, like just something to push myself. And then, in the off season now, I'm in Boston, so I have Fenway Park as my, it's my lifting, my kind of lab, and I have force plates and a Nord board and a bunch of other stuff. And I'm, I just ordered some chains, so I'm playing around with that. So I kind of go based on the seasons of our schedule and kind of adjust my training accordingly. But I definitely get after it. And I think a lot of it is just, I like to try things for myself and see how they will work. And if they work for me, like, they'll probably work for our guys. And if they don't work for me, like, they won't. Like, if I think it's weird, like, a guy's going to think it's weird. And I think a lot of times strength coaches put their own biases on the training that they have with their players. And for me, that's a big no-no. Like, I love strongman, but very rarely, probably never, am I going to tell a baseball player to use an Atlas stone the way I would, right? Like, I want to use the heaviest stone possible. Like, it's probably not wise to use with a baseball player, especially one that's getting paid to be a major league player, right? At the end of the day, they're baseball players first. But, as I've gotten older, I'm 29 now. I'm terribly afraid of turning 30. It's kind of like I'm a similar age to a lot of the players I have. And so for me, it's, how can I stay young? How can I stay athletic? How can I move around? How can I stay in shape? And, manipulating my nutrition to see how it affects my body comp, and, doing a lot of running just to mimic kind of being on my feet all day, and different things like that, that it's a lot less heavy lifting all the time and a lot more like just being an athlete. And the thing is, like, my strength hasn't gone anywhere. I don't know if this is something I've told you, but one of my like ludicrous life goals is to deadlift 500 pounds in every major league stadium. So as long as I can deadlift 500 pounds, I'm fine. Like, I can do other things, you know what I mean? So it's like, I want to do sumo in all the National League parks and conventional in all the American League. So if I can keep those both at 500 pounds, like, I'm strong enough in my mind for what I want to do in life. So that's kind of my current, process, my thoughts on training. If you would have asked me when I started lifting 10 years ago, it was just, I want to be as big and jacked as I can. And then if you would have asked me at Salisbury, it was, as much Atlas stones and keg throws and sled pushes and pulls until I threw up as I can. And I've kind of just evolved as I've gotten older.
That's cool to kind of hear, especially like the scheduling and like trying to adjust everything around it. Like, you treat it in like little blocks where you know that you're going to be at home the whole time, like right by Fenway, and you can kind of go into that gym all the time. So you have some consistency where you can mess around with the equipment that's always going to be at the Red Sox facility. And then like when you go to spring season, like, what you kind of have access to. And then when you're on the road, you kind of just have to make do for that season. It's really just survival mode for that many games, and the amount of work that you guys have to do, and kind of how the nights and everything shift. But the most important thing is, how many stadiums are you up to right now?
Man, I knew you were going to ask, and I should have prepared better for this. So I got every American League stadium this year except Chicago White Sox and Seattle, because I had COVID, so I didn't go on that trip. National League, I got I think 4 this year. That's the thing is, like, so we're an American League team, so we play every American League team at least once at their place and once at our place. But the National League, you only play a certain set. So it's going to take me a few years just because of how the schedule rotates, which is fine. It gives me motivation to stay strong enough. And like, very few people that can deadlift 500 pounds are like, out of shape or weak. Like, I've never met somebody that can pull a barbell from the floor that's 500 pounds. That's weak. So for me, like, that's a good way to just kind of gauge where I'm at strength wise. And I would say, if I had to guess, maybe 18, 19, something like that. There's a few stadiums. So like, my first time I did it was in 2019. I went up for a week, and I was in Texas and Tampa, and I did it in Texas, and now Texas has a new stadium. So I did it in the old Texas stadium and the new Texas stadium. The Blue Jays this year started in Dunedin, so I did it in Dunedin, and then we played them in Buffalo. I did it in Buffalo, and then we finished in Toronto. And I got all 3 of those stadiums. But like, Buffalo's technically not a major league stadium, but they did play major league games there. So it's kind of how you slice it up. I'm trying to get 1 major league stadium per organization, I guess, and we'll go from there. But it's just something that keeps me engaged. And the first day that we get into town, we have to like unload the trunks and get everything set up. And so for me, it's literally 135, 225, 315, 405, 500, and then set everything up. It takes me like 5 minutes to do. I do like 1 rep at each of them, and then I'm gone. Right. And it's like, that's a good first day workout for me, or lift for me. And then the next 2 days in the series, or 3 days, depending on how long we're in a city, I'll do a little bit more training. But yeah, it's fun. And the thing is, in the major leagues, every stadium has a gym on the home side and on the visiting side. So for us, it's easy. We know the facility we're going to use. In the minor leagues, you have to set up road gyms. So for anybody that's listening that's not familiar with professional baseball, when you go on the road, say you're going to, I don't know, Buffalo, New York in a AAA season, like, there's a local gym listed in the league. You call them, let them know, hey, I'm bringing the team in on this day, and then you bring the team there. So the facilities kind of change, where like in the big leagues, you do all your training, all your practice, everything right at the stadium. There's no like, go to this gym, go back to the hotel, go to the stadium. It's just go to the stadium, and once you're there, you stay. And the funny thing is, a lot of the road gyms that I saw this year were outfitted with equipment from the old home side, right? So like, they had all the stuff in the 90s, the 2000s, the early 2000s, whatever. And then when they updated their gyms on the home side, they just pushed it all to the visiting side. So for me, it was even as much like you talk about splitting it up into seasons. Like at home, I did a ton of barbell work and like that kind of stuff. And then on the road, it was a ton of machines, right? Because they had all the machine stuff from, the good old days, right? And so it was like leg press, leg curl, leg extension, and everybody's favorite, the hammer row, right? Like I would just put 2 or 3 plates on a hammer row, and every once in a while during the day, I'd just rep out a set of 10, carry on, rep out a set of 10. And like, it sounds crazy. And I know a lot of people are probably going to be put off by that, but like with the nature of our schedule and like just how things flow, like literally you just have to get your work in whenever you can in the season. Cause sometimes the opportunity is, you know what I mean? There's no like, oh yeah, at 1:30, I'm going to have a full hour and I'm going to train this and this. It's like at 1:30, I may think I have an hour, and then a guy comes in at 1:45 and my lift is done. Right. So it's like, but I might have a free window at 3:30 for 5 minutes where I can sneak in some rows or something. So it's kind of like getting the work in that you can. And then honestly on the road, like I love when there's a leg curl or a leg press, and like, I'm probably going to get, shunned for that, but it's like, sometimes you just need a pump. Right. And it's like, if it's there, you use it. So it's whatever's available to me. I try to find a way to use it. And like I said, at the end of the day, if I can pull 500, like the other stuff isn't negatively affecting me to the point that like, I can't do it. So it can't be that bad, I guess. I don't know.
No, I agree. That's pretty cool though, because every place you go to, you have an idea of what's going to be in there, just some familiarity going back to the same like away gyms, but kind of seeing a little bit of spark of something different definitely keeps it interesting and keeps you engaged, especially like with that challenge you have. Hopefully some other coaches will start joining in on that and make it a race to see who get them all done. You'll have to do something different after you hit all 30 though.
I gotta do an upper body challenge now.
I like
Bench
it.
press in every stadium, or who knows? I'll figure something out. I got to get this one done first. So like I said, the thing is with the schedule, it's like, it may take me 5-10 years just because of how it rotates. And, I'm be almost 40 by the time I get there. So it's like, first of all, I have to stay in the game long enough to actually do that. I might get pushed out long before that and be like, hey, I happen to be in this city. Can I just come to your stadium literally to just deadlift, and then I'll leave? And what does this guy want?
It's important. I like it though.
It's really important.
It's cool talking about like just basically getting it in, because most people, I mean, obviously like on your podcast, a lot of what you guys talk about is kind of the intricacies of professional baseball. And like you already kind of alluded to a few things like calling ahead and kind of all the logistics and kind of weird quirks there are in some of the minor league levels, and even from organization, team to team, like short season, rookie ball, all the different levels, everything is slightly different, and every different organization does it a little bit differently. What have been kind of some of the changes since, because you're pretty new like to the big leagues, what have been some of like the bigger changes you kind of seen, obviously like money and facilities aside, that have really kind of stood out from like what your day-to-day jobs look like now?
Yeah, so this was my first year in the big leagues. I did 5 in the minor leagues before this with the Red Sox, 1 with the Pirates. So yeah, I'm definitely still new to the big leagues, but the biggest thing is there's just more staff in the big leagues. So again, you're probably more well-versed than some other people. So if this is like repetitive to some people, I'm sorry if it's new. So how the minor leagues works, like even org to org, usually the strength coach is in charge of obviously strength and conditioning duties, which include being in the weight room, running stretch, running conditioning, but also setting up that road gym. Like I said, they're usually in charge of nutrition. So for us, when I was in the minor leagues, it was like you're calling restaurants, you're setting up Chipotle orders for pregame and postgame. You're making sure it's delivered on time. You're the exchanger of money, receipts, all of that stuff. Some organizations have a nutritionist that travels with them, which helps, or they have a nutritional coordinator that oversees it. So again, organization to organization is a little different. Mental skills wise, some organizations have like a mental skills coach that travels with the team, but most have affiliate associated coaches that come maybe once a month, once every 2 months to check in. So when they're not there, a lot of the times that'll fall on us too. So when I was with the Pirates, we were doing mindfulness sessions with guys, and it was the strength coach's job to do that. So there's a lot of hats that you wear in the minor leagues, where in the major leagues, we have not only one strength coach, but we have two strength coaches. We share an office. The mental skills guy shares an office with us. We have a nutritionist. We have chefs. We have more athletic trainers. We have a travel secretary. So it's in the major leagues, it's a lot more like being an actual strength and conditioning coach. Where in the minor leagues, it's like you're a strength coach plus these other things, right? And now, like with sports science coming into play, all of those duties will fall on your plate as well as a strength coach in the minor leagues, where most major league organizations will have a sports scientist that kind of runs the data, runs the force plates, NORD boards, whatever it is that you use. So honestly, it was a lot more free time for me, because in the mornings, in the minor leagues, either on the bus ride, at night, in the morning, I'm calling restaurants a week in advance, like, hey, we're going to be in Syracuse next week. I need Latin food on Tuesday night and Wednesday night. Next call, hey, Syracuse Tuesday and Wednesday for lunch. I need this and this, where that's already taken care of in the big leagues. So I had a lot more free time. And I just did a podcast on my podcast with a couple other guys that were first year major league guys. And they said the same thing. They're like, we actually had a lot more downtime and a lot more time for family. So my wife was here this year. The dog wasn't with us. So honestly, in that aspect, like, it was really, really helpful for my marriage. My relationship is just being able to spend more time in the mornings with her, or she would come to a game and then she'd ride home with me, and like we wouldn't have to go to bed right away because I didn't have to be up at 8 a.m. to make nutrition phone calls or anything, like, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's in the minor leagues, you're just required to do more, but at the same time, like, I'm very thankful that I did all of that, because now in the big leagues, I can have conversations with those people, right? Like, we have a nutritionist and I can talk to him like, hey, in the minor leagues, like, we really wanted to do this, but it just didn't fit into our schedule the way we wanted to. It feasibly, it just wasn't applicable. Like, can we do this instead of this? Like, what do you think about this? Like, our mental skills guy, like I said, shares an office with us. So I would talk to him about different things all the time. And it gives you the opportunity to go to the table with something to talk about and have those conversations with people. So I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's definitely difficult. And like, if you've never been in professional baseball and you really like just don't have an idea, like it's a lot of stuff to do. And the big leagues is a lot more of just being a strength coach. But at the same time, the expectation for you to be so good at your job is a little bit higher, because you don't have those other things drawing you away from being a strength coach, right? Like, my programming has to be on point. My interactions in the weight room have to be on point, because I don't have anything else that's on my plate. Like, I still have a little bit of say in these things, and our head guy has a say in these things, but it's not our primary duty in the big leagues, if that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. It's cool to see that. And I like what you said. Obviously, it is a lot more hats that you have to wear. There's a lot more duties that kind of fall into the strength conditioning coach's lap, even if it's not really in the job description per se. But I like that you said, like, it really prepares you for the point in time when your sole focus really now is on coaching and strength conditioning related activities, because now you have the ability to have the conversation with the people that you were kind of wearing the hat for. So you kind of got a brief crash course on what exactly their job is, because you kind of did it for a little bit, and you had to do all those things to kind of get to the point where you are now. And it's nice to have a seat at the table and understand what everybody else's roles and responsibilities are now, when yours is very honed in and on what specifically you need to do now. So that's cool to see, though.
Yeah, 100%. It's prepared me really well. And at the same time, like I said, I'm not a nutritionist. Like, I'm not going to write meal plans for guys, but I can at least have those conversations now.
For sure. Hey, so when you kind of touched on like your own personal training and like having to get it in when you can, obviously your job is not to train and then perform on the field, because you're helping guys actually do that. Is it kind of look the same way in season, where you're really just trying to get training in when you can, or like big picture style, like 1,000-foot view? how does training, like the training approach, really look like for a major league in season for you guys?
Yeah. So again, it's going to depend org to org, how much they're going to put into it. But for us, a lot of our programming is actually centered on doing a little bit every day. And I know like the Twitter trolls are going to be out and be like, oh, you should only train 3 to 4 days a week. You don't need more than that. And like a firsthand experience, I think a lot of the beauty in baseball is you play every day, right? And guys are very routine oriented. And if you can give them something small for their routine, and they find that it leads them to feel good on the field or have success on the field, they will do it. And it's the easiest way to get buy-in. Like, I know everybody talks about relationships, communication, all that. It's very important. Here, the bottom line is results. If you don't win, if you don't perform on the field, something is wrong. And whether that's right or wrong, whether you agree or disagree, like that's just how it is. And so for us, like, we have found success, and I have seen success just with shorter duration activity. Come in, do your correctives, do some core, do a few movements, maybe a little bit of baseball specific preparation, and then go to the cage or go to the field. And the thing is, like I said, I was doing total bodies every day, and it was very, very small, 3 exercises, lower, upper, and a core, and then move on to the next day. And I found that I didn't get any weaker, and it didn't fatigue me to the point that I was feeling gassed on any specific day, but I could still get certain work in. Like, it's kind of a plug and play of like, hey, if there's an off day tomorrow, we can push it a little harder today, or today's a travel day, like super light session. But the idea is just, because we play every day, and because every day matters and every win matters, especially in the division that we're in, it's very competitive. We have to focus on getting guys ready to play and perform today. And so that's a big difference between the major league level and a lot of like the college levels that you hear from, and really just the pro level in general, because even in the minor leagues, the lower levels, they still play every day. And I think a lot of it is like the younger players, the lower levels, there is that development aspect of getting stronger, bigger, faster, stronger, where a lot of guys in the major leagues are older, and they don't necessarily have like the adaptive resources that some of the younger kids do. When you're 20 years old, you're like invincible. And then when you're 30, you wake up and you're like, fuck, why does my back hurt today? And so it's like finding just enough to get them going and get them moving, and then go on and do your baseball activity and live to see another day. And so it might seem counterintuitive. And it's funny because on my podcast, one of the questions I ask is like, what do you believe in strength and conditioning that others think you're crazy for believing? And a lot of the answers are daily programming. And to the outside world, it probably sounds crazy. Like, really, you're lifting 6 days a week and playing every day and traveling? Like, that doesn't make sense. But if you're in the setting, it makes complete sense. And like, guys really buy into it. And the way we do it is just, we have specific corrective exercises for guys. We have specific preparation drills for guys. We're talking with the baseball coaches to figure out what they can work on. And then we're kind of trying to bridge that gap, so to speak, and kind of, mold the two, blend the two together, but still get our work in, still stay strong enough, and, just stay healthy and stay on the field. And I think a lot of the times, the people say the best ability is availability. And I agree, like, you have to be available, but at the same time, like, if you're going to be available, the next step is performing well. And if you're not performing well, like, you're really kind of taking up space on the field. So for us, like, results really do matter. And I understand the process is very important, but if your process doesn't lead to any results, like, it's useless to me. Like, at the end of the day, like, did you get a hit? Did you not get a hit? Did you produce? Did you not produce? And if not, like, we need to fix it. Right. And that's the nature of the beast in especially at the major league level, and especially in the AL East in our division, is everybody's super competitive. And when people come to Fenway Park to play, they elevate their game, because Fenway Park is the special place, right? It's like 40,000 packed, loud all the time. Doesn't matter what part of the season is, it's loud. And when we go on the road, there's always "Let's go Red Sox" chants, always. And so every game for us it just feels magnified, right? So like we have to win, and it's very important. And so it's a little counterintuitive, and you can contradict me and tell me I'm wrong, and it's fine. But it's like that's kind of how professional baseball is. It's the reality of it. Is like, yes, I want you to be strong, but like I want you to go tonight too. Like I need you to be ready to play tonight. So like let's just do a few of these and get out there and get our work in.
No, I'm not going to disagree with you, because I think honestly, not being in that side of the profession, or have gone through the ranks, through the minors and through the major leagues, and only work with the college guys that hopefully get pushed off towards you. Like that seems like the approach and the way to actually kind of take your training. Obviously, just sheer fact for the amount of games you guys play and how long you're on the road, and all the different variables that kind of go into that. It's like, I don't know when you're going to be able to sneak in a big training session on their off day. It's like, why would you waste an off day when you're doing that, or doing it right when you get off in East to West Coast travel? Good luck. Or worse, going West Coast to East Coast. Yeah, there's no way. You got to like touch it in small little segments, and make sure that, again, availability is perfect. But yeah, you got to be able to perform daily, because if you take one big session and you lose a 3-game series, you're probably not doing that session again, and you lost those guys for sure if that's the case.
Yeah, and I think the easiest way to avoid soreness is just being consistent with your training, right? It's like if you come in every single day and you do just a little bit, just enough, like you're not going to be sore, right? Like we have plenty of guys that do Nordic curls in season and they're fine, right? Because they train all the time. And to say that we only do a little bit does not mean it's not intense training, does not mean it's not heavy training. It's just programmed according to the schedule, right? Like our head guy and I can very specifically remember from this year, we were flying across the country, West Coast trip. We were going to California for a week, and we pretty much spent the whole flight mapping out the second half of the season based on our schedule, based on where we were going to be, the travel days, the back-to-back games, the nights, the days, and how we could fit everything in for guys. We still run all the time, we still lift all the time, and it's really like you wouldn't expect it to be the way it is. And it's not a lot of fluff. I think that's the big thing for us, is like we come in, we hit the important stuff, and then we get out. There's no like excess going on. And I think, like you said, that back in the old days, it was like 2 days a week you lifted, and it's like, well, that's good. You're very consistent. But for me, I've seen like it's just better to come in and just do a little bit. And the other thing is like, when you play a Sunday day game after a Saturday night game, a lot of guys are a little bit sluggish. You just give them something to get going that day, right? And that's it. And that counts as their lift, whether it's, some med ball throws or some core stuff, or just something to wake them up. And before you know it, they feel good, and they just keep coming back for more and more and more. So it's like you said, the major leagues that's another big thing from the minor leagues, is just how much the travel, just going time zone to time zone, right? Like in the minor leagues, I never really had to do that. And we had a couple flights here and there, but in the big leagues, you fly everywhere, and usually it's overnight and it's different time zones, right? There's definitely times where we flew, 3-hour flight, got in at 3, 4, 5 in the morning, and we have to play that night. And it's like, it's all part of it. And it's like, how can I get you just to wake up and get going? And so I think one of the big kicks that I'm on lately is like, there's a difference between developing baseball players and developing Major League Baseball players, right? And like you said, in the college setting, you don't play all the time. So, your training days are different, where we play all the time, and our training days have to be different to match our schedule, match our setting, and just match, what we have in front of us. And I think it's a valuable lesson for coaches, is like, you shouldn't really judge someone else's program if you haven't been in that environment, right? It's like, I've never been a high school strength coach. So if I see a high school strength coach on Instagram or Twitter, like, I can't say his stuff is good or bad. I'm assuming that's what it is for him, right? We're all trying to give athletes the best that we can with the knowledge we have, right? Like, I'm never going to work and saying, I'm going to purposely try to hurt this guy today, right? Like, that just doesn't make sense. So like, I look at the environment I'm in, I look at the schedule we're in, I look at what's available to me with my equipment and things like that. and the guy that I know what he's going to do and not do. And then I program accordingly. And that's really, I think that's kind of how you win. And in terms of programming, getting guys to buy in, is just factoring all those things in. And then if you see it from someone else, like, just shut up and just ask questions. Like, you don't have to bash them. Just, hey, why do you do that? Like, oh, because this. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Like, I've never been there, so I don't know. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. People could spend a lot less time just trying to bash programs and ask some meaningful questions, because yeah, the context is king with all that stuff. And that's why it's always kind of interesting to see people go. I mean, from sport to sport in college is already different, but you kind of know the college setting. But to go from like college to professional ranks, and then you see kind of all the different dynamics and all the factors that come into play just in the day-to-day operations, not even just with the programming, that the stuff is night and day different, and you can't do the same stuff. And even with that said, like you talked about it before, like we don't have to go into detail with it, but every organization too has a different approach, and the schedules are different, but you still play the same amount of games and same amount of days. And there's a lot of things that when you place them side by side are equal, but there's still factors that are very unique to that organization. There's different people that have different mindsets about what their philosophy and their programming style looks like. So you're going to get a lot of different approaches to trying to still accomplish the same goal, and that's to be World Series champion. So it's definitely an interesting concept to like finagle all those things together and rethink what like the definition of lift looks like for some people. And I think you guys took a pretty cool approach about just trying to put those pieces in together, but balancing all those factors is definitely a tall task. So, and you talked about it before, like being on all the different levels and kind of working yourself through the ranks, like through the Red Sox and Pirates organization before too, like from like a strength and conditioning lens, because you said that developing baseball players is very different than developing Major League Baseball players. From a strength coach's lens, what do you really think makes a successful like big leaguer stand out? Like, I know you can kind of look back on some of the years that you had some guys that have made it now to the bigs. Is there anything that's like maybe a mindset, physicality, or something that really kind of stands out besides just being very good baseball skilled?
Yeah, I have notes on this one because I wanted to make sure that we got this one here. So it's like, honestly, it's really hard to pinpoint what makes a baseball player, right? Like as strength coaches, we all want to say like, oh, because this guy was in the weight room, he was on the field and he was successful. But the reality is, like, I've seen guys that avoid the weight room at all costs and they ball out on the field, right? And it's like, that guy literally is just really good at baseball. And then some guys like need the weight room, they need that routine, they need the consistency to be able to feel like they can perform on the field. So I don't know if there's like a specific, like if you look at a young kid, you're like, this guy's going to be a major leaguer someday, he's going to be good. And a lot of people try to predict that, and it's really hard because some guys are really self-sufficient. Some guys need their hand held. Some guys love the routine. Some guys have no routine. Some guys love the weight room. Some guys have no desire to be in the weight room. I would say, like, for me, the thing that I think is really common amongst the elite performers is they maximize their ranges, right? And it's not hey, everybody needs to be super mobile or everybody needs to be super tight. Like, if you know a guy is really quote unquote tight, he's not very mobile, but he's able to maximize those ranges really well in his swing or in his throwing patterns. He tends to get the most out of his body, and usually those are the guys that do well. And then like the elite, the gold, like if you're gonna hunt absolutely one thing, is like somebody who's hyper mobile but strong all the way through the range, including those end ranges. That's kind of like the gold standard of guy who's gonna throw hard and gonna be very low risk of injury. But like even with that, like, how do you define strength versus how do I define strength? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of gray area that, like, baseball is so cool because it's such a skill-based game, right? And there's all sorts of shapes and body types on the field every single night. Like, when you look out there, you have super small guys, super tall guys. You know, some guys are really heavy, some guys are really light. Some guys are $180 throwing 95. Some guys are 275 throwing 95. Like, it's just there's no one size fits all for baseball, which is something I really like. And then the other thing is, like, in other sports, it's very easy to just say, hey, put on 20 pounds of mass, like, get bigger, faster, stronger. But in baseball, because it's so skill oriented, you can actually really do a lot of damage to a guy by putting weight on them. I mean, I played like college ball, like I said, and when I was in high school, I got into weightlifting, and it was like, like I said, I wanted to be as big, as strong as I could be. And I got big. I put on a lot of weight my senior year. And when I put the bat in my hands, it was like, I didn't know how to swing for the first 2 weeks of the season. Like, I had to, recalibrate everything. And and that was at high school, you know what I mean? In Western New York, where nobody cares about baseball because of the snow. Like, these guys are major league top level players in a very elite game. Like, every little tick off of their skill set really is magnified and really matters. So sometimes, like, the best thing is just keeping a guy where he's at. And it's like, it hurts other strength coaches to hear that and be like, yeah, sometimes this guy needs less weight room. And they're like, no, we can always do more. And it's like, no, like, you're literally going to fuck this guy up if you do too much here. So again, in a long roundabout way, like, I don't know if there's like any one thing you can look at. And I think a lot of guys I've seen, like, they have that killer mentality. They love the weight room. They're very routine oriented. But for every one of those guys, every two of those guys, there's one guy that doesn't care about anything, and he just goes out and plays the game, and he rakes. So it's like, I don't know. It's because it's such a skill oriented game. I think a lot of people can find success in a lot of different ways. And it depends how you define success. Some guys, their ceiling is a, mid-level AA player, and some guys are Hall of Fame worthy major league players. It's like finding what their ceiling is and just trying to maximize that for them, and, try to make the most of their livelihood. That's what this is. It's their livelihood for them. And when the game's gone, the game's gone. So, like, we're trying to maximize that window. But I don't know. It's just, if somebody out there knows the secret and, like, has, like, hey, I guarantee this will provide success for players, like, please hit me up, let me know, because it would make my life way easier to just know that, right?
Yeah, it would make everybody's life a lot easier to kind of know exactly how to create the perfect ball player, or be able to predict who is going to be successful. And I love to see, like, my guilty pleasure is watching, like, the 4-year-old kids, like, with the crazy dads. Just, he's like, oh, he's going D1, he's going to be the next NFL star. It's like, all right. Or watching, like, I hate watching, like, little kids with helmets on that are bigger than them, that look like bobbleheads, and they're just smashing the shit out of each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you're not going to make it to 10.
Dude, the thing in baseball too is you have the international market, right? It's like, I was telling my brother this. My brother plays junior college baseball, and I was like, listen, you might be a really good player in our small town, right? But as soon as you go to college, there's a bunch of kids on that team that are just as good as you. And guess what? For every kid on your team that's just as good as you, there's 5 kids in the Dominican that are super hungry to come play professional baseball in the States, right? Like, that's their way to get out, is playing pro ball. And so they're so hungry. And, like, baseball is really, really crazy. Youth baseball is insane. Just, it's I don't know. It's just, there's so many players internationally that, like, the odds of you even getting drafted are so small. Like, even playing college baseball are very small, but then getting drafted are small. And then, like, becoming the elite of the elite of the elite in Major League Baseball is so, so small. And it's really changed my view as, like, a fan of sports, just being around some of these guys, because they are the best players on the planet. There's nobody better. If there was, they'd be in the major leagues. And, like, the random guy on Twitter is like, oh, this guy sucks. It's like, this guy defied all the odds just to get to the major leagues. Like, whether he performs at the major leagues or not, the fact that he stepped on the major league field as a player is, like, absurd. Like, the guy is literally an elite player, and people have no idea. And the other thing is like, they're all people, right? They all have real problems. They all have families. And so for me, like, I feel for them, right? And it's like, it's changed how I view other sports. I love hockey, right? And as a kid, I was a huge hockey fan. And now, like, I just watch it and just kind of enjoy the game. And like, I wonder what that player is thinking right now. Like, wonder what time they got in last night, because somebody's telling me, they're like, all the fans see is the game at 7:00, right? They sit down, they watch the TV, or they go to the stadium, but they don't think about, like, how did the team get here from Oakland? Like, what time did they land? Like, what did that guy sleep last night? Is his family with him? It's just kind of changed my mindset on fanhood. And like, I don't know, like you said, there's parents that think their kids are going D1 and going pro, and they're, oh, look at how sweet this kid's swing is. Like, that kid might hate baseball by the time he's 10 years old. Like, you don't know, like, maybe he wants to do something else. Like, I grew up in a house where it was just like, be outside, play everything you can, don't come in until it's dark, like, figure it out. And if we ever have kids, I think that's how we'll raise our kids. Just go outside, play, explore, have some fun. And when you're ready to make a decision, make a decision. Like I said, I played hockey and baseball. So it was like, as soon as I got burned out on hockey, it was baseball time. And then I felt refreshed. And then as soon as I was burned out on baseball, it was hockey time, and I felt refreshed. And we tried not to, cross those two over just for that reason. And, it made me enjoy the sports and really appreciate them. But if I would have played one or the other year round all the way through, I would have just been absolutely toast.
Yeah, I can imagine. I was the same way, trying to bounce back and forth from a bunch of sports. And I think that's what I like to do now, like between strongman and Highland games. And if I can do them, it's awesome to it's my experiment to try to see if I can be decently successful at both of them and find ways to program them, because there are some similarities and there's some stuff that are very different in how you train for them. But it definitely does help when I'm burnt out with one to kind of flip flop and be like, I'm going to take a break from this and go somewhere else. But I can't imagine the other things. And definitely when you get to the professional level, there's no fluke people that get there. You can't have pulled the wool over people's eyes for that long to get to that level, especially with baseball, with how it narrows down. Like NBA and Major League Baseball, there's only a finite number of players. NHL, same thing. NFL, like, there's only a finite amount of players that get there. Baseball and basketball are crazy just because, and hockey a little bit, just hockey's smaller market. Like baseball and basketball, you're getting people that are successful from every country. And baseball is getting bigger overseas too, like the Japan League and some of the Asia leagues, all the South America teams. So to narrow it down to just 40-man rosters for 30 teams is crazy. And to know that there's levels below you that want your job and would kill for your job, it's a crazy feeling. But kind of talking on those levels and like the career path, like, it's pretty normal, because we've talked about a little bit the differences between the minor leagues, collegiate style, high school, and then when you get to like big league baseball, you have to know the intricacies of those different levels to kind of put you in a good position to know what the players are coming from, like to know what they need to do to be successful. And then you learn all the major league things that kind of go into it. If you were going back like your first year, like starting your career over, is there anything that you might change to kind of better prepare you, knowing that you wanted to be in professional baseball, or someone that wants to be in professional baseball? Is there a good path to kind of take as a coach to get there a little bit sooner, or at least be prepared for it?
Yeah, I think overall, like, you are where you are because of what you've done, whether it's right, wrong, good, or bad. And I don't think there's anything I would necessarily want to change in my path, right? Like I said, I started as an engineering student. In high school, I wanted to be a math teacher and a baseball coach, like just to live small town. And the decisions I've made and the mistakes I've made have gotten me to where I am now. So it's not necessarily something that I would change. I would, like, if I could give myself advice, there's two things I would say. One is trust yourself, and two, like, take your relationship serious with my now wife, but we've been together forever, like literally 100 years, it feels like. And so, trust yourself in the sense that like, so when I was young, and I think a lot of strength coaches do this, is like my mentors, that was all I wanted to do, right? Like I only wanted to write my programs how you did them. I only wanted to do what my internship coordinator at TCU wanted to do. And anything that anybody said, like I didn't want to listen to it. And then I got to the point where I was like learning and kind of filtering. And then it was like, it's like the conference syndrome, right? Like you go to conference on Saturday and then by Monday, your whole program is scrapped. And it's like, too many people do that. And it's like, you have to trust yourself. It's crazy how many times I'll see on Instagram, like somebody influential is doing an exercise. And then for the next week, they're tagged from somebody like, oh, saw so-and-so doing this. Now we're doing it. It's like, if that wasn't in your program before, like, don't just throw it in, and it don't have like the fear of missing out is very real in strength and conditioning. So for me, like, just trust yourself. Like, I know what I know. I put in good work. I take my continuing education very serious. And like I said earlier, when I go to work every day, my intent is to get players ready to play, right? Like I'm never going there with the intent of, hey, I'm going to hurt somebody today on purpose. I'm going to get this guy worse, right? And, it took me a good amount of time this year to really accept that, like, hey, you're good enough to be here. People trust that you are going to make the right decisions. Like, just trust yourself, trust your judgment, and just do it. So I think all of us kind of go through that, right? Like we have the imposter syndrome. We feel like we're not good enough. So that one, just trust yourself. And then the other thing is like taking my relationship serious. My wife has just been fucking unbelievable, man. Like we've gone everywhere together. When I was in Maryland, she was living in Spain, and I've lived in Tennessee, Florida, I've lived in Arizona and New York, and now we live in Boston. And the whole way she's just been like, yep, all right, let's pack up the car and go. And it's like, when I was young, we started dating, we started texting each other literally the day we graduated high school. And it was one of those summer things, like, we're just gonna have some fun, hang out. And it's like, then we went to college and we're like, yeah, it's still like whatever. It's like, and I'm always going to be indebted to her. I'm forever grateful for her. And like, there's nothing she can do that I will ever change how I feel about her. And it's like, I should have taken that more serious. I've always told her, even when I proposed, I was like, this is who I am. This is my job. This is my livelihood. If you don't like it, don't marry me. And she's like, no, fuck that. Let's go. Let's get married. And I'm like, all right. And it's like, I've always kind of put strength coach Chris first before like husband, family guy Chris. And like I said, this year was really good for me because I got more time with her. And it's like, she's doing her own thing. She's building her career and making a name for herself in her field. And like, I'm fully supportive. She's fully supportive. But like, there were times where she wouldn't have been around and I'd be fucking lost as a person. Cause I'm not very intelligent with a lot of things. Like I know what I know and I like to do what I do. And then like all the other stuff, she takes care of it in the background. And I'm like, fuck, if you weren't here, like who would do this? Who would do that? And she's like, yeah, you should probably take me more serious. I'm like, fuck, my bad. It took me way too many years to realize that. So those are the two things. If I could go back in time, just trust yourself and give a little more attention to your wife and take her a little more serious. But other than that, like I said, the process, the path is what it is. You make your mistakes, you move on, and you are where you are for a reason. And as long as you're, working towards a goal, like I don't think you really have to go back and change anything.
I love it. Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest things that I've found doing the show is really kind of listening to people's stories. Like obviously it's cool to see people's paths like in their coaching and like how they kind of grew up playing sports and then competing and training, how they kind of intertwine. But it's even cooler to see everybody's unique path to kind of get where they are. It's so different. And yet we're all kind of in the same similar situations, similar coaching places, or where we want to be, or on the path of where we actually want to be next. So it's cool to kind of see that stuff. And yeah, you can go back and say, I wish I would have done this and this, but really it sets you up for the position you are in now. And I can't think of a better way to like go back and change it, because your path will be vastly different. You'd have no idea where you are next. And yeah, like along the way, there's a lot of people that are definitely supportive on the coaching side. And that's a huge piece that definitely, unfortunately, gets put on the back burner just based off hours and everything that's going on and kind of obligations. And I think most people that are coaches put the blinders on and they're so dedicated to what they're doing and bull rushing straight ahead. If there's anything in the path, if there's anything that kind of, it just gets pushed out of the way, and then you hope you can apologize for it later down the line. But definitely good advice for anybody coming up, because I mean everybody now too, anybody that's been in the profession for as long as we have, like since college, almost what, 10 years now, really. So that stuff is still applicable at this point in time for sure.
Yeah, and I realized in my rambling I didn't answer your question about baseball, like specifically. So we have the PBS CCS. I'm going to throw a plug in because it is relevant. So the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society is our group of strength coaches in professional baseball. We have a website. Obviously, I have the podcast for us, and we put on webinars and seminars, I think 3 or 4 times a year. And there's always job postings on there. So, if you're a strength coach who aspires to be in professional baseball, check out the website. It's baseballstrength.org, I believe. And if you search PBS CCS, you should find it. But there's jobs on there. And then, the thing about baseball that's really cool is it's a really small world once you get in, and like you're always probably 1 or 2 people away from everybody, right? Like if you wanted to get into professional baseball, like between my podcast, I know a ton of people, and our head guy, I keep telling him he's been around for 100 years. Like he knows everybody, right? So it's like the 2 of us know a ton of people. And if I'm like, hey, do you know so-and-so? Like, yeah, I know this guy. So like the baseball community itself, the strength and conditioning community in baseball is very small. And once you're in, like, you're always just 1 or 2 people away from anybody that you want to meet. And everybody's pretty cool. You know what I mean? It's like when I reach out to somebody about being on a podcast, like 99.9% of the time, they're like, yeah, let's set it up. Like, are you free tomorrow? Can we do it? You know what I mean? So it's, in terms of baseball specific, I think for me, it was like, I tried everything and I realized like pro ball was it for me, right? I did the college setting, I did the private setting working with young kids, and then I did pro ball, and it was like, I think pro ball is a choice for me. So I think it's the same as athletes, right? Like we don't necessarily want them to specialize till they get a little older. Like as a strength coach, you don't necessarily have to specialize. Like I knew I was probably going to be around the game of baseball. I always loved baseball. It was whether it was going to be college, high school, private setting, or pro ball. And I tried them all, and it just happened to be pro ball was the one that kind of fit me. So I would say build your experience, work with as many teams and athletes as you can early. And then once you're ready to make that step, like the PBS CCS is the place to go to find jobs specifically in baseball. And they're posted all the time. And it's getting better. And, my first year in the Red Sox organization, 2015, 2016, whatever year it was, like that was the first year they had a AA and AAA full-time strength coach at those levels. And since then we've added 3 or 4 more full-time positions, I think. So like baseball is it went from like this kind of, hey, you use this seasonal, you get this on your resume, you worked with a pro team, like really cool. And then you move on to like, no, this is actually really valued in professional baseball, and we want good people and good strength coaches, and we're willing to pay you and make you full-time and everything. So it's come a long way, even since I got in, 6 years ago. And the stories I hear from some of my mentors from, 10, 15, 20 years ago, it's come light years further ahead. So, and like I said, it's gaining support and momentum. And so it's just going to get better. So if you want to get into baseball specifically, work with everybody you can. And then when you're ready, PBS CCS is the place to go.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll link all that stuff. Obviously, that's a great resource between the podcast and everything you guys post on there too, for anybody that's interested in getting into the professional side of baseball. Because everything we discuss and everything you guys talk about, there's a lot of nuances specific to that. And it's cool to see, though, obviously, like I know you're a mentor, like where you're working in some of the other organizations, like coaches that you've worked for too, like to hear some of the differences in the minor league level and like the advancement to get to the major leagues and how it's changed over the years. Because anybody that comes in the minor leagues, just talking to all my guys that have been drafted, it's wild, all the different things that go on. And obviously we could tell some crazy stories, but we'll save those for a different day of things that go on during that. I mean, I've got summer ball stories that are not meant for this show or any recording, but to hear that there's always an advancement and there's congruency from the main organization all the way down now. And now there's professional strength coaches that are getting paid throughout, like all the way to the Dominican League, and more training staff and everything. Hopefully it gets to closer towards major league levels in like AAA, and it starts to trickle down. Have you started to see or heard from anybody like in those levels, like any of the changes? Obviously now you're kind of a little bit removed, but are some of those changes in 6 years, have you been able to notice them a little bit more now?
Yeah, honestly, the reality, the biggest thing is that you can make a living as a minor league strength coach now. And like I said before, it was like my first year in pro ball, I was seasonal with the Pirates. So it was basically my contract was just through the season. I made a little money, got a little housing stipend, and that was it. And then when the season was over, it was like, we might renew you, we might not. Where now, like, there's tons of guys that have been in the minor leagues for a long time and like live a comfortable life. And the beauty is in the off season, you have that free time where, if you want to run a side hustle gym, you can do that. There were like minor league seasons where I thought about just going back to working at Big Lots, just like to do something different. And, just as crazy as it was, like just finding something else to do. But there is opportunity in the off season to make some side hustle money. And like the money you make as a full-time strength coach is not bad in the minor leagues. Obviously we can always get paid more and be more valued for what we do, but overall it's not something to, complain about. And, so that's really been the biggest thing, is just the ability to be a full-time strength coach in the minor leagues and have a comfortable life and have a family and kind of be able to have that work-life balance is really good, I think, for a lot of strength coaches. And, it used to be like you had to get to the major leagues or be the coordinator to make a living in pro ball. And I think that's why the door was so revolving. People were in and out all the time, where now you have those full-time positions. They pay pretty well. They got benefits, all of that stuff. So people are more willing to stay. And as you know, obviously the more that you have the same staff around working with the same players, the better things get, right? Like the revolving door is tough for players because they start to build trust with one guy or gal, and then they're gone. And then somebody else comes in and then they're gone. Where now it's like, the same guy has been with a group of players in high A, double A, triple A. He's kind of moved up the system with them. And 3 years later, they're super comfortable and their training is really, really on point. So that's been the biggest thing in terms of like the strength coach life. And then, like I said, there's more emphasis on nutrition. There's more emphasis on sports science. And so they're starting to bring people in, starting to add other positions to kind of help filter those things. And overall, it's a good life, man. And everybody in baseball is a little bit crazy. Just like I said, the schedule is a little bit chaotic and the travel and all of that. And obviously the minor league stories, things like that. But it is a good life for the strength coach, and like I said, in the off season, you have free time and you can do whatever you want to do. And, in terms of players specifically, like the changes, just a lot of players are more in touch with their bodies. A lot of players are putting more emphasis on their training, on their nutrition and their sleep. And they know that those marginal gains that they can make are by taking care of their bodies more and taking care of their bodies better and just feeling better when they go out to play, right? Like nobody's ever 100%, but if you're playing at 90% and I'm only at 80%, like you already have the advantage. So like, how do we find those marginal gains? And players are putting a lot more emphasis on that. And it's good for us because then they come to us with questions and, we can kind of talk through some things with players. And so, those are the biggest changes in pro ball that I've seen in just the 6 years that I've been in, just on the strength coach side and on the player side.
Awesome. Yeah, I know what I wanted to touch on with you too, like obviously the conversations you had and the comfortability that you have with those players, that's pretty important. Obviously, when you're training with them every single day, you're on the road with them every single day. That communication with them, like the rapport that you guys have built, the trust that you have, Like that's crucial. And it's nice to have other people on staff, because if one player gravitates to another coach, that's great. If they gravitate to someone else that's helping out, that's fine just as well. But like you said, those guys they're professionals. They've worked their way up through the ranks. Some have been through the college setting, some have been playing for 10, 15 plus years, or been in the organization for just as long. How do you kind of stay up to date on information, different training modalities and stuff like that? Because I feel a lot of times at the pro level, those guys are getting approached by different companies with like different versions of like compression, different like breathing techniques, different movement patterns, and like functional like screening stuff, and whatever it ends up being. Like they seem to be the first one approached by it. How do you kind of like stay ahead of the curve with them, so that you can have those conversations and make sure that what you're doing they're bought into, but you're still welcoming to any ideas that they bring in from their own coach or someone else to the organization?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like a lot of those companies, when they're first starting, they want to latch onto somebody who's a big name for their marketing purposes. And so for me, like if you haven't taken anything from this podcast other than the fact that I can talk with the best of them, like it really does help me, right? Like I always tell people my dad would talk to literally anybody, and I think I got that from him. And like my ability to just speak and get along with people really helps me. But the two things that have really, really helped me in that front specifically, number one is like being vulnerable to not knowing something and being comfortable admitting that you don't know, right? Like if a guy comes to me, he's like, hey, this company reached out to me. They're a sleep tech sensor company. What do you got on them? To be honest, man, I don't know. I've never heard of them, but I'll look them up. I'll do some digging and I'll get back to you. And then following up on that is huge, right? If you tell the guy and then a week later you haven't talked to him, like that guy's kind of out. But if the next day you come in like, bro, I checked out your company last night. I got this, like, what are you feeling? Then you can kind of have that conversation, but you have to be willing to put the ego aside and just be vulnerable and follow up with it. Right. And then the other thing for us is like, a lot of players go to certain off-season strength coaches during the off-season, right? Like, so the reality of professional baseball is we get them during the in-season, and then in the off-season, they're free to live wherever they want. And where they live usually dictates like who they train with and everything. So for us, the key is having a relationship with that strength coach. So there's a list of guys that are my contacts. Like you said, there's two strength coaches in the big league. Some guys gravitate more towards our head guy, and some guys gravitate more towards me. And it's not like anything, it's not a big deal. But those guys are kind of the guys that I check in with, right? So if they train with a guy, my understanding is that because the off season is such a valuable time and you put all your trust in this guy in that valuable window of time, I need to get to know this guy. I need to have a relationship with him or her, depending on who they train with in the off season. And so for me, if I know what that guy is doing with that trainer or that strength coach, I should say, in the off season, it makes those conversations I have with them easier during the season, right? Like if there's a specific pitcher, I know that he trains with, Tom so-and-so in the off season. And so that guy comes to me, hey, when I was with Tom, we were using this piece of equipment. And because I was talking with Tom in the off season, I already know the equipment he was using. And so I can have that conversation with that guy. And so it's being ahead of the curve when you can and having those relationships with those people. And two, when you're not ahead of the curve, being willing to admit that you're not and being vulnerable and following up with finding out information to talk to the player.
Yeah, those are great points. Obviously, you're not going to be able to know everything. So at some point in time, it looks a lot better and you build a lot more rapport when you could tell an athlete that you don't know, but you'll get back to them. And then you actually follow up. That's huge. Like to be able to follow up and actually open the conversation with something that they were interested about. And now you kind of have equal ground to actually have that conversation and speak a little bit more on the topic rather than just talk out your ass and make stuff up, because if they find out that you're making stuff up, you just lost them too. So those are great points. But it's always been interesting to me, obviously, when you get to a place that has an abundance of resources and way too much money to probably type out, that everything is going to be available to them. And it's really kind of picking and choosing, or trying to really manage all those things, because you don't want to major in a minor and just only be worried about recovery, only be worrying about this specific thing, or just trying to nitpick, even though at the end of the day, you're really looking for marginal gains with those guys. But push comes to shove, they really need to be bought into whatever that tool that you're using to get the marginal gains is. And if they're bought into you, usually it's easier for you to sell them that tool to actually be able to implement it into the program. So cool to hear.
Yeah, and to be honest, like I'm curious about everything. Like I'm kind of a life learner. I like to learn about new things, and a lot of the times the players were teaching me things, right? They're like, "Hey, I got this," and I'm like, "Oh shit, I never heard about that." Like I want to look, like I genuinely want to look into that because I'm curious, and if it's going to help our program, like I need to figure that out, right? Like you said, it's marginal gains, and like it could be something absolutely outrageous, but if it's going to help us, like let's do it. You know what I mean? So it's up there at the highest level. It's, any little bit of competitive advantage you can get, any little bit of gain or positivity that you can get, like you need to at least explore the potential of that option. And so for me, like I spent a lot of time learning from players this year. We had, I want to say, I think it was 4 guys reach their 10-year marks in the major leagues this year with us. And so it's like being able to pick their brains, on a daily basis. Like, how have you lasted as long as you have in season? Like, playing this game, throwing as much as you have, hitting as much as you have, like, how have you lasted? And just being able to see their processes and being able to see how they go about their day-to-day approaches and how they've evolved over their careers, for me was really, really, it was really good, like really good learning experience. And for me, like I said, I can learn from anybody. I can talk to the wall and probably take something from that wall. Like it's just how I am. And I don't know if it's something you can teach people, or like, I think curiosity is kind of just an innate thing, and it's kind of just in you. And like, I'm genuinely a very curious person. So I talk to anybody and I can learn from anybody. And for me, like being my first year in the big leagues and learning a bunch of the ins and outs to begin with, and then like having those guys kind of like talk to me about their processes too, has already given me ideas for the future on like keeping other guys healthy long term.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, like being curious with all the things, and wanting to learn and wanting to understand and branch out and broaden like your experience and your knowledge base. I think that's the key to it. And like, to go further too, the real key will be being in the same place for a long period of time, which hopefully you get the opportunity to do, rather than just kind of going through different scenarios and being a different environment, like going through the ranks to get to the major leagues. That'll be when like your curiosity really gets a hold of itself. Like obviously stuff changed, new players come in, and like organizations will change too, but like I think if you're curious in the beginning, you're always going to be curious. But it'll be interesting to see what happens, and 10 when you're hitting your 10-year mark in the majors, like what questions are people going to ask of you, or what questions are you still asking of guys that are in their first year playing, when now you're the one with the scales tipped that has more experience than them.
Yeah, and our head guy is, like I said, he's been around a long time. I always joke, tell him he's been around for 100 years and that he's getting old, but he still keeps himself in great shape and he still trains. And so for me, it was like, I got to look into the future in my first year in the big leagues. And like, I couldn't have asked for anything better. Like super mentor, very patient with me. Like he understands I'm a little rough around the edges, but like, I'm going to get the work done. And like, I'm going to interact with players the way I am who I am. Like I don't try to sugarcoat. I don't try to hide anything. Like I drop F-bombs left and right. Like it's just who I am. And like, he's very supportive of me, and to be able to see, he's been around like 15, 20 years and been in a couple, been in some different organizations, been in some different spots, and being able to just bounce things off of him for me was like a dream come true. And I hope that I can stick around long enough where I'm in his chair someday, right? Like you said, I have 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is. And I have a young strength coach who's first year in the big leagues and like, you know, wide eyed and like, oh my God, this is it. And it's like, calm down, buddy. Like, this is how it's really going to happen. So, you know, that's kind of, you know, what I aspire to be, right? Is like, he's a mentor of mine and I think very highly of him. And I kind of mold who I hope to be as a strength coach someday in the long term, like how he is with me. He's very patient with me and he teaches me things and, you know, just kind of gives me some insights along the way. And the thing is, like, you know, we talked earlier about like programming and things like that. It's like the stuff that worked this year, like we might try to implement it next year and we might shit the bed. It might not work. You know what I mean? And so for me, those conversations I have with players really helps me form ideas for the future, right? Like, we're already looking at the program we did this year, auditing it and trying to make it better for next year and make the appropriate changes. And, you know, we'll get feedback from the players then, and then the following year we'll make our adjustments again. But even like being in the same place, you know, if I spend 10 years in the big leagues with the Red Sox, every team's going to be a little different. Every group of players is going to be different. And even those same players that we have now are going to be getting older, right? And their processes are going to have to change. And that was the biggest thing I learned from some of the guys that had been around, is like, when they were young, they could just roll out of bed and go play baseball, but they've had to change how they approach their preparation to play the game as they've gotten older. Their bodies are a little bit slower. It takes them a little bit longer to wake up. And, you know, there's certain guys that, like, on a day game, this is my routine. On a night game, this is my routine. On the road, this is my routine. At home, this is my routine. And the guys, a lot of, like I said earlier, baseball is very routine oriented. And if you can tinker with their routine and just make it a little bit better for them in that specific moment, I think that's a big win for you. And again, sometimes it's, you know, young kids don't need anything. They just show up and play the game because they're ballers and they're athletes. But as they get older, they lose a step a little bit. So now we have to kind of change things for them. So again, I always tell people I reserve the right to change my mind, right? And I do change my mind all the time. And like, what I think today, like if we recorded this podcast tomorrow instead of today, like all the things I say might be totally different because, you know, the situation's different, the circumstances are different. So I think that's how we, like, you know, as a strength coach, like that's why I'm curious, because next year, yes, I'm still going to be with the Red Sox. I'm still going to be at Fenway. I'm still going to be in the big leagues. A lot of the players are going to be the same, but they're all going to be a year older. I'm going to be a year older, and hopefully I'm going to be a year wiser, and it's going to change how I view things. So just, you know, I don't know. Like you said, I think if you're curious at the beginning, you're going to always be curious, and you shouldn't be afraid to make mistakes. You shouldn't be afraid to admit that you don't know something. And like here, really, you have to just leave your ego at the door and just understand that it literally is all about the players. Like, the players have to go out and perform. And if they don't, like, you're probably going to be out. So.
Yeah. And I think that's a big reason why you guys have been successful, obviously being curious and being adaptive and learning from every situation. So it's really cool to hear. And it's great to have a mentor that's by your side the whole way and supportive and patient with you. And it's cool to see like a mentee be in a spot where you're really soaking up everything, like you're appreciative of it. Like, I do, not to toot your own horn, but like I do remember that, like when we were at Salisbury together, you were like always attentive, like listening to people, and like I tried to do the same thing. Like, you came back from TCU and I was like, I want to steal everything. Tell me, just give me your head for 2 days and let me go through everything that you learned, because I'm interested. And it's a great position to be in as a coach. It's a great position to be in. And for anybody that wants to see progress and doesn't like stagnant anything. And it's hard to do that probably in baseball when everything does become routine, because then after a while you think that you can just replicate the same stuff over and over again. And like you said, the players are different, the situation's different, like everything has to change, but you still have a good framework that you can work off, and you have the experience that you can kind of rely on to make those changes later on.
Yeah, there's certain principles that, you know, I think we always try to have in our programming and with players, but like you said, just living within the framework, especially, the minor league level, it's hard because you have a coordinator who oversees everything, but you have a strength coach who's the day-to-day guy. And it's like, do I do this because the coordinator wants it, but it doesn't fit the situation today? Or do I make the adjustment because I'm the day-to-day guy, right? And so having a framework really helps you to just make the necessary adjustments, right? Like, for instance, our total bodies are push, pull, squat, hinge, carry. Okay, well, within each of those categories, there's some wiggle room, right? Like, you may want to do a suitcase carry, I may want to do a farmer carry or an overhead waiter carry, whatever, but like, it still fits that box. And like, hey, maybe today we hit the waiter carry, next time we hit the suitcase carry, but within that week, we hit all the goals we wanted, right? And I think that in professional baseball specifically makes organizations successful, is they have a built-in framework that has some wiggle room within it all the way down, so that if a guy goes from high A to double A, or from double A all the way he jumps to the big leagues, they still know what's expected of them and they still know how things run, but they know that at each level they're going to get a little bit of a different twist or a little bit of different flavor from the coach that's there. So for me, that's like, again, I reserve the right to change my mind on things, and there are things I'm going to change my mind on, but I think our framework is going to probably stay very similar, right? And it's the scary thing is like this is how we've always done it thing, right? Like, it's super cliche, but it's there for a reason. Like, I don't ever want that to be a reason. Like, oh, in 2022, we're going to do our program this way because in 2021, that's how we did it. Like, no, I want 2022's program to be the way it is because it's going to fit the situation of 2022 and the team that we have and the schedule we have.
Great point. Yeah, I love that. Hey, so like any good training session, we end the show with a finisher. So I got 4 quarters for you, 4 questions, and some strongman overtime. So you can go rapid fire, or you could take your time with it, but you ready?
I'm not going to go rapid fire. That's not how I am, but yes, I'm definitely ready.
I wanted to at least throw out the option. All right. First one, biggest influence in strength and conditioning. And I don't want to throw this one off too much, and you might have to reserve your person, but favorite athlete growing up. It's going to be hard not to pick a Red Sox guy, I guess.
Okay, so first we'll do the athlete. So I was a Derek Jeter fan. I was a huge Yankees fan growing up. But it doesn't affect me now. Let's just put it that way. We'll get that one out of the way. That's rapid fire. The mentors, man, I have a ton of them, and it's been each step along the way, right? Like, Matt Nine gave me my start, and like Mario Muscarella was the first one to put me in a weight room, and my dad turned me on to schooling in exercise science, and you took me under your wing and showed me what to do at Salisbury when I didn't have a fucking clue. And then when I was with the Pirates, it was Joe Hughes, and now with the Red Sox, Kiyoshi Momose. Like, I think every step along the way, I've had somebody that's kind of prepared me for that next step. And it's hard to pin down just one, man, but all of them have played a part. And like I said earlier, every stop I've been at along the way, every right, wrong. Oh, and fucking Zach Dakin at TCU. I cannot forget him either. It's like every stop along the way, people have helped me. And every day I just try to make them proud of me, really. And I do what I can to, hey, this guy was an intern under me. Like, he's not a piece of shit. He's a good guy. And, look what he's doing in his career. And not to say that a big league strength coach makes me a good strength coach or anything. That's not it at all. But I try to be a good person because all of those people had my back at one time. And I'm just trying to make them proud, to be honest, man. Like, my dad calls me all the time. He's fucking proud as shit. And it's super embarrassing for me. But at the same time, like, I'm glad he's proud because he did so much shit for me growing up that, like, it's the least that I can do. You know what I mean? So there's no one mentor, but everybody along the way that's helped me has helped me in a specific way. And I try to make them proud, and I try to return the favor to whoever reaches out to me, and hopefully be a mentor to them too down the road.
I like it. Hey, so I know we talked about it. It's kind of hard to find time between your crazy schedule, but when you're not coaching or not training, what are some of your go-to hobbies?
Man, if there's a pond around that I can skate on, I love to play hockey. I love to get out and skate. I like reading and not necessarily strength and conditioning. I'm a big like murder mystery novel kind of guy, and really just spending time with my wife and my dog, man. Like I said, she's been so supportive. So if she's like, hey, let's go for a drive to here, I'm like, all right, fuck it. I'll spend time with you guys. You know what I mean? So I'm a super low key guy. I don't like go out. I don't drink. I don't do any of that stuff. Like I kind of just chill. So if something strikes me, I'll do it. And if not, like I won't, so I don't necessarily have any specific hobbies, but the biggest one is like, if I can play roller hockey or pond hockey somewhere, like that's the one I'm going to try to do.
There you go. Hey, so if you've given it much thought, what do you think you would be doing if you weren't coaching? I know there was a few paths you could have chose, but what would it be if it wasn't coaching?
Yeah, man, I would love to be a teacher. I think I don't know, like we're all kind of teachers in our own way in the weight room and as strength coaches, but just, that like high school, I wanted to be a high school math teacher, like I said, and coach baseball. And I know that's still technically coaching, but like the engineering thing just kind of came out of left field. I don't know why I decided that, but the math teacher thing, like if strength and conditioning doesn't work out for me and I get pushed out someday, I could definitely see myself teaching and just being around high school kids, man. It's such an influential age. And like, that's when I started lifting weights, right? It's like, I didn't know any better. And somebody kind of took me under their wing. And there's plenty of kids that are in that like weird in between area that if they just had the right mentor or the right teacher kind of push them, I think, 10 years down the road, they might come back and be like, dude, you changed my life. Right. So like teachers are definitely like underappreciated. My mother-in-law was a teacher, and like the stuff that they have to go through, and like you talk about like not being paid for the stuff that you provide, right? The value you provide, right? Like, I guess that would be a big one for me, is trying to be a teacher somewhere.
Awesome. Hey, so setting up an ideal training day, maybe strongman Saturday, or if it's just got to be a hammer road day, go-to training music or PR song, and what's the best post-training meal look like?
Well, the meal is easy. That's sushi. You know that as well as anybody, that I'm a big sushi guy. I love sushi, especially after a hard training day. Man, ideal music. The problem with me is my music is absolutely all over the place. Like if you know me as a person, like my playlists have Russian, German, French, Spanish, English, country, rock, rap, heavy metal. I think if there was one song that like I think I could go through, there's like probably like Walk With Me in Hell by Lamb of God is a good one for me. Like it far, like honestly, I've fallen asleep listening to that song, as psychotic as it is. And like, I don't know, it just puts me in like a really settled mindset of like, I don't think about anything else than whatever I'm focusing on right there, whether it be sleep or a lift. So I think that one's like the specific song. Like I love heavy, like I have no idea what they're saying. Like I listen to this like Polish Christian black metal band, and they're like screaming and like it sounds very angry, and they're really like talking about how much they love God and this and that. And so it's like I'll jam to anything. We used to squat heavy to Miley Cyrus when I was in grad school. Like I really don't care. A lot of times I'll lift in silence. Like I don't know. The one thing, like if you've been in professional baseball, you know this, and if not, you don't. Like professional baseball just kind of turns like music into just noise for you, because all day, like you have Latin guys coming in, you have American guys that like country, you have guys that like rap, and like they're in charge of the radio, especially the higher up you go. So it's like, oh, okay, whatever. I'll listen to Post Malone, and now I'm listening to Bad Bunny, and now I'm listening to Drake, and now I got Garth Brooks. It's like, whatever. You know what I mean? It doesn't like the mindset of like music for me is so far gone from all the crazy shit that I've listened to over the years. It's just like, yeah, whatever. If I'm gonna max deadlift, it could be in pure silence, it could be black metal, or it could be Miley Cyrus, or literally anywhere in between.
Yeah, got to be able to mix it up, but it's nice to throw on some powers metal.
Yeah. Oh, at the end of the day, like powers metal is really gonna play in for me. And the other thing is like people are gonna walk in and give me a side eye, like what the fuck is wrong with this guy? So like if I need some time to me, like I just put that on and like nobody will bother me, because they're like, oh, he's in killer mode. Like don't go near him.
Perfect. Hey, so last one I got for you. Favorite either under the bar memory or favorite coaching memory of yours?
Oh shit. Whew, I don't. That's like the one time I'm getting stumped here, man. I don't know. The thing is, like, so I really love Atlas stones, like I said. And I don't know if Atlas stones count as under the bar, but I'm going to count them as under the bar. And so we were in Rochester for a weekend series, and I brought the team to the gym, like I said earlier, and they had a separate room with strongman equipment, and it was on a Saturday. So we had a Sunday day game the next day. And so I got up early by myself, went to the gym. I don't know, it's like 6 a.m. And I went and did Atlas stones at the gym in Rochester. And I hadn't done them in a long time. And there was no music on back there. There was nobody there. It was just me and the Atlas stones in like some peace. And like, that was the most like at peace, calm, like it was almost like a spiritual thing where it was just like, I was just lifting these stones over the platform, like over the rack. And like, again, it's not under the bar per se, because I don't have a bar, but like it is lifting nonetheless. So like, that was probably my favorite, like lifting memory of myself that I have. Like coaching wise, I can't tell you, like there's been way too many moments that I've had way too much fun in this career. And like, there's not one I'm going to pinpoint, but that one, like, it just felt good. Like there was nobody there. It was just me doing Atlas stones. And if I would have got crushed by the stone, like somebody would have walked in an hour and I would have been dead under the stone. You know what I mean? Like it was just very primitive, very spiritual. So for me, that was it.
Love it. Yeah. Anytime Atlas stones are involved, I know you would be happy. You'd be appreciative.
Oh, always.
That's awesome, man. Hey, well, for anybody that's got questions, baseball related, strength conditioning, sushi, whatever it is, like what each stadium looks like, where can they get a hold of you, follow you, and listen to the podcast as well?
Instagram and Twitter are it for me. I should have wrote my handles down. I'm fucking underprepared. I'm sorry. Christopher Messina. I think it's CMess_43. I'm active on Instagram in the sense that I'll post like random shit. It's pretty much like me lifting, my wife, my dog, and any food we eat, and the podcast. My Twitter, I literally only post the podcast, and I look at funny shit on Twitter. So like if you want to like actually get in touch with me, Instagram's probably best. You can email me too. Chris Messina 43@gmail.com is my personal email. I'll get back to you. If you want to call me, like my cell 716-467-0852, get in touch with me. And then, like I said earlier, the podcast is on the PBS CCS website. It's also on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, the PBS CCS podcast. And like we talked about earlier, there's over 100 episodes. There's a ton of guests. We all have professional baseball experience. And, you know, if you're curious about getting in, there's definitely episodes for you on there.
Awesome, man. Well, yeah, you got a lot of information on there. It was great to finally get you on. This has been, like we said, it's been a while in the making, but I appreciate everything that you've helped me over the years too. Like I think that's the big thing about mentors, mentees, like not to say I was your mentor, but like sharing the office with you and hanging out in Powers all the time. Like, I think that was the coolest part about it. And that's what I miss a lot from, and I take away a lot from too, is just hanging out with all the coaches and going through like the quote unquote grind with each other all the time. And it's awesome to see where you've kind of come after your career and talk to all the guys that we shared an office with and now are doing bigger, better things.
Man, it was a crazy group at Salisbury. If you really look back at it, we all were just young strength coaches, and now we're all out doing our things. And I appreciate you having me on, and it was definitely different to be on the other side of the interview. And obviously, you know, I think very highly of you, and I appreciate everything you've done for me. And, you know, this podcast is awesome. And I can remember when you first started the process and we were kind of going over it, and it's really cool to see what it's grown to, man. And hopefully I, you know, provided something for the listeners other than just random rambling. But yeah, thanks for having me on, dude. It's been awesome. And I'm looking forward to keeping in touch as we have.
Yeah, man, of course. Appreciate it. Hope this doesn't get you fired. And I hope you get all 500 stadiums soon. So I'll
appreciate it.
I'll talk to you soon, brother.
Yep. Thanks.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com. where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.